design a home that is given a platinum rated GBI award. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Dr. Tan.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation. Classmate is here, so he knows me from when we were almost in diapers. We grew up in Petaling Jaya, so we went. He grew up with a silver spoon in his mouth, so he have to work. So I became an architect, also a Christian from Glad Tidings, formerly from FGT with Yo Hong Sing. Then I went overseas. I was with the OCF. I was the chairman of OCF Oz for a couple of years. Then I came back. I was with FGT. Then I joined back to my wife's church, which is Glad Tidings. So a long Christian lineage. But tonight I'm not supposed to preach. So I'll go straight into my talk. I think this is something that's quite dear to my profession. We all go through seasons in life. There was a period when I was in Australia where I was preaching like 5 times a week, different churches. I used to travel doing missions and casting out demons. Good fun stuff. Yeah. When I came back, I set about doing my career. I spent the last 35 years in trying to hone. You know, they say architecture is a practice, so we are constantly practicing, never getting it perfect. Hope we are getting better at it. I was asked for a topic, and I thought a relevant topic for Wisma Maran, for my friend here. I came to see this space, I think a year ago, and when I saw the back view, nobody has seen the back view. I don't know if you come in the daytime, you see the river, the confluence. This is where KL started, and it has a lot of significance. This should be a mega church here, next to where KL started. And I saw the Sultan Sama building from the back, you know, and I thought, wow, I've never seen this view, not appeared in any single postcard, and he owns the view. My talk today, essential role of art and architecture to create vibrant, lively cities. So it's a bit narrow in the sense that it's talking about town planning, city planning, etc. I'll talk a bit about art, and I'm an art collector. I've been collecting art for 30 years. I've opened one contemporary art museum, private museum in KL, Bukit Bintang. I'm about to open my second museum in Jalan Raja Chulan. I bought a building there, nothing like this. And the second museum will be opening there, 25th May. This has been credited, discovered in 2017. It's called the watr.kl, and it's supposedly the oldest painting in the world, found of all places in Sulawesi. So Leonardo picked up his skills from Sulawesi. And it's 45,500 years old. It was done, it's a life-size pig painted onto a wall. And there are 2 hand marks on it. And it's celebrating probably an aesthetic sort of celebration of some achievement. It has always been about God. It has always been something that belonged to God, and God, all creativity comes from Him to that extent. Those of you who have visited the Sistine Chapel, Rome, I love this picture at the bottom. You know, every one of those murals on the ceiling are by Michelangelo. Every one of them. But if you look at the people who go and visit Sistine Chapel, they just go to one painting. And you always ask yourself, what is so unique about this painting? And it's that painting there that I circled. It's right in the center of the room. And this is the painting, the creation of Adam, Michelangelo. I think those from our generation, you remember watching E.T. E.T. Come Home. And it was actually the same thing. It was a detail like that. And all through life today, if you're in AI, if you're in AI technology, NVIDIA and all this, it is this same thing. And it is about seeking after something greater than you. I think it's interesting to share this, that when I was a student in uni, I went to church and I heard a prophetic minister come and speak. And he said that the world system is headed towards a world system that is like this. He said a world without work, a world of entertainment and pleasure, and a world of sports. So at the time, you know, in the early 1980s, we thought world of sports and all this. But today, a guy who kicks a football for 20 minutes gets 100 million pounds. You know, it doesn't make sense. And find Taylor Swift make $1 billion and have great influence to nations and countries. So you find that what I heard that time seems to be coming true. But the first part is even more interesting, a world without work. How does a world without work happen? But if you look at the Roman Empire during the days of, at its apex, they didn't work. They didn't go to war, they hired mercenaries. Today in Ukraine, war is the mother of all invention. Started with jet fighters, today they use Iranian drones. Nobody goes to war anymore. Soon there will be foot soldiers, there will be bots, and there will be autonomous vehicles that will go and fight the war. So after a while, Rome was something like that. It did not, everyone stayed at home, ate grapes, lying down there, and you watch Christians get killed in the Colosseum. Good entertainment. So along the way, art, if you look at this, it actually was part of a Reformation. Michelangelo appeared at a time of great change, and it became known as the Renaissance period. Now, if you are Baba Nyonya, 1500s, you look at Hang Lipo, the story of Chenko coming to Malacca and marrying Sultan Mansur Shah, was also the same time as the Renaissance happening in Italy. Why the Renaissance is so well documented is because Europeans write very well, they control the Western media, and Renaissance is very famous, whereas Peranakan that brought about exuberance in color, fashion, style, dressing, food is hardly recorded. But the Renaissance happened. So art, we find, has transformed from being something that only the church could have. Okay, so early days, it was cave drawings, it was in hieroglyphics for the pyramids and so on. It was all forgotten. But along the way, art started to come down to normal humans. And the Renaissance period was where the Medici family, rich tycoons, started to challenge the church. And they started to commission art, and they owned the best artwork rather than the church. So you see art coming down to a different level. Last 100 years, art is owned by Rockefellers, the bank owners, etc., etc. And of course, Leonardo DiCaprio is a very big art collector. So basically, you find that art originated for something that was for God, then it starts to come down to the human level. So I think most of you know that your body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. So you find, instead of art being drawn on the ceilings of churches, it starts to come to another temple, which is your body. And people now translate art onto their bodies. Not something you should show in church, right? So along the way, as a practicing architect, I started to see this convergence of how art and architecture and society works in that sense. And I came up with this statement that a bankrupt nation is devoid of good architecture and art. When you go and excavate an old site, an old city site, the first thing you find, number one, are buildings, structure, foundations. The next thing you find are pottery and little things that they made, which are art. Okay. Some are utensils, but they are beautifully made. So when they excavate Malaysia, I don't think they'll find Pakatan Harapan or something like that. Okay, I don't know what they'll find. So as an architect and as a person who's interested in my time here, that God has placed me here for, I feel that we should contribute something for that only one life, right? That one period in time. I come back from overseas where, for example, if I come back from Tokyo or Kyoto, then I land in Malaysia and I see all these posters, visit Malaysia, the proboscis monkey, the Sarawak people. And then a tourist arrives here, he sees all these things, he goes to a hotel concierge and says, I want to find this monkey. He said, you take a flight 2 hours to Sarawak. There's none in the city. Then he says, I want to see natives. There are none in this part of the world, go somewhere else. So I think in some sense, our people travel today, not so much just to see culture and native things, but they actually travel for buildings, for architecture, to see things. And in some sense, our government is not channeling the efforts in the right direction. I don't know how many have been here. This is in New York. We call it the poster boy of art museums. And this Philip Johnson is an architect. Your history boring to you, but everything starts from small things. MoMA today is a multi-billion industry. It brings in so many tourists to New York that it equals almost 20% of tourists who come to New York go to MoMA. So it's a very powerful thing. But MoMA did not start as a massive, huge, one whole block of New York building. It started from a little townhouse. So you can start from small beginnings and then you can grow. This in architecture and town planning, we call it the Bilbao effect. Those of you who have traveled, you should go and visit Bilbao. Bilbao was a very industrialized city. Terrible, there was nothing there at all. It was very drab, run down, and not a single tourist attraction. And Frank Gehry, an architect, designed the Guggenheim Museum. And that became known as the Bilbao effect. It brought a lot of transformation. A piece of art in the city transformed the whole city, and till today, all over the world, they have coined this the Bilbao effect. That's Philip Johnson, who started the MoMA, and that's Frank Gehry. And when he went to visit it, it seems that Philip Johnson cried and he said, "This is the greatest building of our time." Jury is out. But the amazing thing about it is that architecture can actually bring about great change. So you look at the old picture and the original when Bilbao was just completed and the type of development that happens all around. So I own a very small 5-story walk-up apartment in a very bohemian, it's all Bangladeshis and foreign workers, and I decided to convert it to a museum. So that's the surrounding, and that's the museum. It's in Bukit Bintang. We've been running for 2 years. I felt that when people come to Malaysia, they go to Jalan Alor, eat chicken wing, eat char kway teow, then they go home and they cannot remember what it tastes like. But every time when I travel, I always bring my kids at least to visit one museum, one art gallery. And many years later, when we're sitting down for dinner, they will say, "I remember we saw this piece of art. It leaves something indelible in their mind." And it's what I call intellectual value. And you don't just satisfy one of your senses, which is hunger, but you actually stimulate other emotions. Okay? So art is a very powerful thing. So that's my museum, and that's my collection. And I decided after I did that, I realized I could make it work because I could cover the cost of running it. So I bought another building, it's down the road, opening on the 25th of May. That's the new museum, 202 floors, and it's called Mutu. I bought a third building, Jalan Tun HS Lee, and that's Ng Sik San, a good friend of mine. He's also a very prime mover in the social network here. A friend of mine, and he's got a huge art collection. So I purchased this 5-story building, and in the midst, 2 months later, we'll open a third museum. I can do it because I've been collecting art for many years, and I can do it because I'm an architect. I'm not afraid of building. The only thing that scared me before was curation. I didn't know how to curate art. But I tried to hire curators, and they're all prima donnas. They tell me all kinds of grandfather stories. Then later I found I could do it better than them. So I publish books because I believe that books have certain value, they have certain content that you cannot find elsewhere. I go to flea markets and I go to old market and old bookshops. And if you find back your Form 5 or 1960s, your Form 5 Sejarah or history book, it's got the names of every king in Vietnam, Thailand, listed back. The thing is a few pages, you know. Today you look at our textbook, even Hang Tuah don't exist. And you look at Wikipedia, it's not there because they did not translate it into digital, so it's not even in cloud. So when I go to some of these flea markets, I see this old school textbook by Longman and all this, 1960s, written by British people. I buy it straight away, and I open it up. Sure enough, it's got the heritage. It's got all the kings of all the countries, you know, all around us. And that's why I went into book publication. I just want to talk a bit about where we are at. This is Duomo, the power of the church and the square. I have to give honor to the guy who invited me because the building was stunning. And you all don't realize it, but this square is a very important square. It was called Market Square. This is Duomo. Those of you who have been to Milan, this is where the Renaissance fight started between the Medicis and the Venetians. So, and it was because they started to take art away from the church. It started to come down to human level. And that's in some way also what the gospel is like. it doesn't belong to the pastor or the Pope. It belongs to every one of us. And printing press, the Gutenberg Bible, it started giving the word back to people. That's why I publish books. This, those of you who have been to Milan, you look at this square, it's beautifully restored. It's got all around it are F&B, and you can go to the Lafayette. That one is actually a very expensive Galleria shopping center at the time. And this is another square when I was studying architecture. Now we got internet, we can get all the photos. But when I was a student in the 80s, you had to rely on the lecturers showing you slides. And he told me that, I remember this very, very well, this is San Marco Square. And he told me this is the perfect square. And you know, being a Malaysian, I'll show you. On this side, it goes to the water. And then on the other side, there's this L-shaped area, and it looks towards St. Mark's Cathedral and the tower. That's the other end. But if you look at it, and my lecturer told me it's the perfect square. I said, this guy don't know about shapes. He didn't play with Lego. I don't see a square. And actually, it is an incredible square because it is, when you stand at the right at the extreme end where the dot is, you look towards the church because it's placed out this way. Everything straightens back out. It was an optical illusion that today when you use your camera, you can see very clearly. But at that point in time, when they say it's a perfect square, the guy who did it was subliminally smarter than the guy who looks down and said, this is not a square. I said it was not a square, but I've been to this place, I've taken this photo many times, and it is a perfect perspective. We have the same thing here. Unfortunately, we don't do it very well. The building is falling apart, as you read recently. We don't have a tower, but we've got a 100-meter flagpole. We've got a old Selangor club that is a bit like a Galleria. We've got a church that's something like San Marco, and we've got historical buildings. But unfortunately, we don't really know what to do with it. This is the other one where we are, I think you all entered from this side. This is Market Square on Medan Pasar. This doesn't exist anymore. It's been changed, the landscaping by DBKL, for good or worse, I don't know. The clock tower was built by BEP architect many years ago, but this is a very important square. And that's the clock tower. You can see this one around here. And these are very old photos that I've collected, and you can also find them on the internet. That was the square. At the end of the square is actually Dr.Tan's house. So this was where KL, the business side of KL, actually started from. These are old photos, and you can see it transforming. 1950. And recently in the World Architecture Forum that was held a few years before, or 2 years before COVID, they actually converted the area to be a functional square, what it should have been. We are currently working with a client. He's been acquiring property around the square because he sees that there's no other square in KL. You've got shopping malls, but you don't have a square. And he's slowly acquiring these properties. It's just transforming back to the glory days. KL has a lot to offer. It has this still around. This is a very old photo where it can still be lit up. Today I'm not sure that it can be lit up. And you got people who have drawn facades of this place. This is a story of small beginnings. Baby born in a manger in Bethlehem. Transform the world like no other. So good things can start from small things. And the important thing is to start. Without effect, are we ready to look into, put our effort into transforming this? Those of you who collect art, you know KOS is a Prabhanan temple in Java. He recently did this. Suddenly, the temple became the most visited thing again. The sculpture was only there temporarily, but it brought back a new perspective, a new visualization. And sometimes old things need a sort of a revival. This is Ibrahim Hussein, a very famous painting that's in the museum, Balai. It's of his father, the Kampung guy, and that was the day man landed on the moon. And he looked into it, that was the age he was born, 1936. And he looked at the face of when the spaceman you see in the face mask is actually when he's all dressed up in technology, he still thinks about his kampung, or where he came from. And to all of us, we all remember our happy days, plucking rambutans, catching fighting fish. I don't know if you're that old, but we always think that those were the best days of our lives. So thank you very much. I hope that we have the courage to make our lives better.
Thank you, Dr. Tan. I'd like to invite you up to the podium for a Q&A session. We had a good time listening to Dr. Tan's very interesting talk. So we're in a Q&A session. If you have any questions, please raise up your hand and we'll address your question. The caveat here, please keep your questions within 1 minute so that we allow more people to ask more questions. Is that cool? All right. So I will start off the first round of questions now. Dr. Tan, you very interestingly talked to us about the Bilbao effect, and I also loved it that you told us that small beginnings can grow into big things, just like the MoMA in New York. Now, you've also mentioned that there's some work that's begun around this area in Medan Pasar, where there's acquisition of several small buildings. So can you tell us that on this transformative journey, is there potential for this to be the next Bilbao effect?
I think the vision is there, and the aim is there. It's already started. If you see the Singnam, it's all owned by Yap Aloy. If you do a historical study, Yap Aloy, his house was right at the end there, and Singnam is now being restored to what it was originally. So it has started, and this person has also acquired about 16 properties around here. So it's definitely on the move. Choi Wai Cheong is also a very big investor in urban regen. Today, I think you're giving free stay at Sheraton 4 Point. I'm just kidding.
So in your very capable hands, should we start investing and buying some around this area already?
I thought Bible say build up the treasures in heaven.
Amen.
I think you will never lose if you invest in the city center. I think Kuala Lumpur has gone through this transition where we all went to the suburbs, and now we are finding that all the infrastructure is in the city. The most amount of infrastructure is invested in the city, and all the public transport routes come to the city. Tourism is all in the city, and that's where, if you are in the suburb running a cafe, your crowd is very small. But if you had the same cafe in this area where it's next to Central Market, and every suburb comes to you, I think it's a no-brainer. A light on a hill cannot be hidden, and the city will come back alive. That's our aim anyway. Yeah.
Right, excellent. You have been described in some articles as being a trailblazer in green sustainable architecture. And so you've incorporated this in many of your designs, making it energy efficient. Is that your plan as well for the transformation of this area?
Climate change is a very real thing. I kind of like Donald Trump, but I don't know why he don't believe in climate change. It's actually very real, and it's already all around us. Last week I was in Bangkok. It was almost impossible to walk on the street. 44 degrees. You walk out to makan, you come back, you have to change shirt already. It is real and it's happening. Buildings use up 40% of the world's energy, and technology has changed tremendously. It's very easy to build a green building, to bring down your energy costs. Today we had a talk this morning where we got some experts in, and just by changing in a university or school or a hospital, just by changing all the LED lights, they can save 75% of the lighting costs. Things like that. 100% I will do green building but conservation has some issues. It needs to look back like it was restored back to what it was. You cannot simply just put plaster ceiling and try and hide all the insulation. So those are things you got to be sensitive about. But insulating the roof is very important.
Thank you. I think you were also one of them who put together the recipe for the GBI criteria. So how accessible is a GBI development or home for an ordinary Malaysian?
Okay, how it happened was, I mean, when you study architecture, we are always taught about environment, sustainability, but it was in our head, and sorry, I practiced, but we didn't really, or did it, so we didn't know whether we were achieving our goals. So I remember I finished a house for my lawyer friend, and then one day he calls me and said, "Hey doc, my house electric bill is 10,000 a month." So I said, "Wow, 10,000 a month." He's a rich guy lah, but he said, "In my office I don't mind, I can tax deduct it. In my house, who can I tax deduct it from?" So then we went through the whole process of changing the lighting. He got robbed before, so his house was surrounded by 350 watt floodlights. So we actually changed quite a lot of that, and we managed to bring it down to still very high, 4,000 over for a house. Then I thought, wow, something is wrong. Then the subprime thing happened in America, and people started to review the types of property they bought. And that was also the period where Al Gore came out with the book, An Inconvenient Truth, which he won a Nobel Peace Prize for. Then we went into that. And we are so glad that we did it, but we were like 5 years behind Singapore. So Singapore, because they were doing Marina Bay, made it compulsory for all buildings to be green rated. So every headquarters, stand chart, everyone went there because in their criteria they had to go to the green building. Malaysia at the time, we are very smart, so we only got smart buildings, A-class building, all no classification, and later smart is relative, right? Everyone thinks they are smart. But then we went to GBI to try to solve that problem because Esso and Shell wanted to move their headquarters to Singapore. And they said we can only open a branch office in Malaysia, and we will lose a lot of this clientele. So that was one of the reasons we came in. I live in a GBI Platinum house. My average temperature in my house is 25 degrees. I don't use aircon, only in the bedrooms. I is just a joke, interesting anecdote for you. I tried not having aircon in my bedroom. So after 1 week, my wife said, "Are you serious about this?"